The Black Moon Lilith point can denote the search for one's own sexuality and gender role and a rejection of the patriarchal order, as is evident in the charts of American drag superstar RuPaul, his hit TV show, and one of its stars, Pearl. Black Moon Lilith is the hot topic du jour in astrology. Many astrologers are exploring this fascinating topic, trying to make sense of Lilith, the dark side of the moon, which is a point and not a planet, by the way. In my own chart, I have her directly on my MC, so she must be of some significance to me, I reckon. The problem is, I don't know in what way. I have read over a dozen books about Lilith. Unfortunately, I still haven't got quite my head around her. It's frustrating, and I don't think it does justice to boil her essence down merely to emancipation. For this reason, I conducted my own research in the hope of adjusting or adapting ancient Lilith myths to modern chart interpretation. A mythical provenance is easy to relate, though there are differing versions. Lilith was the first wife of Adam, before the much more famous and familiar Eve. The two women were very different, almost like the proverbial good and bad sisters in a fairy tale. But Lilith was there first and, unlike Eve, was not created from one of Adam's ribs. Instead, just like Adam, she was born out of the dust of the earth, and as his companion in Eden, she was his equal. Well, not quite, because when it came to sexual intercourse, she was not supposed to be on top. She had to content herself with the rule-book missionary position. This restriction made her furious. She just wouldn't budge and rebelled by taking God's name in vain. In consequence, she either vanished voluntarily or was banished from paradise by him. Adam, on the other hand, wanted her back, interestingly. Lilith took to living in the wilderness and consorting with demons, brooding on revenge. Some sources claim that she disguised herself as the infamous snake and induced Eve to eat the apple. Other stories say she was divinely punished with barrenness or sexual partners made sterile. She craved motherhood and stole babies from other women, making her a very scary archetype, both for men and women. It strikes me that this figure is so negative and unsympathetic. How am I supposed to work with this point in a chart? Aren't there some pieces missing in this puzzle? Was Adam really adverse to a little experimental spice in his sex life? Why did he miss Lilith? And what about Eve? Were they rivals or friends or a little bit of both? This is important when touching on issues such as feminist solidarity and abuse, for example the Me Too movement. And why was Lilith denied children? While the moon represents what is most familiar to us, Black Moon Lilith is what is hidden from view, blocked from sight, and thus difficult to feel consciously. It is obvious that this fierce and powerful female archetype is at odds with tradition and patriarchal gender stereotypes. Lilith goes against everything normal in society and is contra the God-given order. Lilith says no to what expected of her from a male god at last, and wants to find her own way of expressing her femininity. Since this may be particularly frightening to men of traditional cultural expression and thinking, the witch archetype must be punished. So, again, Lilith deals with finding one's own sexuality and gender role by saying no, no, no to the patriarchal order, finding one's own fecundity and seeking equal status. In a female chart, it can be enlightening to explore what Lilith wants to say, but what about Lilith in a male chart? Is there a male equivalent to misogyny? The answer is yes. It's called misandry, a hatred of men. Here, I must tell you of a personal encounter the other day, and I am still unsure whether I was exposed to misandry. It was shortly before I was due to fly off to Vienna to give a talk about Lilith and repressed femininity in male charts. I had dinner with a couple of astrology savvy mates and wanted to share an example of how Black Moon Lilith could be expressed in a man's chart. In recent years, in trendy areas of Berlin, I have noticed that more and more fathers are proudly out and about with their infants. They seem to embrace a new, modern kind of fatherhood, more caring, gentle, and affectionate. For the whole world to see, they strut around with their baby symbolically attached to their chest, a sign of liberation from ancient role stereotypes and one-dimensionally rough and tumble macho men who are not allowed to show their more tender emotions in public. To care for a child is traditionally a lunar activity, thus a female and maternal issue, and not typically a male one. I, for one, am always rather touched when I see these new men and find it utterly endearing. However, this was obviously not the case with the woman who sat next to me at the dining table. She looked irritated and burst out, "But wouldn't this overly motherly behavior castrate a man's Mars?" Interesting, I thought. Why was she so contemptuous? Is this a typical reaction? Is she projecting her own unembraced Lilith side onto these men? I had a sudden flashback to my own childhood. It reminded me of a story my dad once told me. When his mates found out that he changed nappies, he became the butt of all kinds of jokes, some of them even questioning his masculinity. Surely we are experiencing the dawning of a new age of sensitive, caring manhood. Well, not entirely, because every trend creates a contra-trend. Here, the British politician Jacob Rees-Mogg springs to mind, a father of 6 who prides himself on never having changed a nappy in his life. He just isn't modern enough. He also vehemently condemns abortion as a sin and opposes gay marriage. In his chart, Lilith is in maternal Cancer in a square to Chiron in Aries. Does his chart show us some repressed maternal issues here? What strikes me as remarkable is that he showed up at an official function with his old nanny, and he looked untypically mellow and tame. Lilith is a feminine archetype. Together with Moon and Venus, men can transfer these energies to the women in their life or try to own them, sometimes both. Rees-Mogg clearly projects Lilith instead of owning her. Lilith issues often manifest as repressed and rejected facets of femininity. These facets might remain unconscious and repressed because of the shame and helplessness that they involve. On the same day, I came across a picture of veteran Hollywood actor Donald Sutherland with his 40-year-old son Kiefer sitting on his dad's lap at a gala. How fun is that? Donald has a Venus-Neptune-Lilith conjunction in the 12th house in a trine to Uranus in the 8th. Apparently, these men do not have a problem with showing softer emotions in public. Disarming, I thought. Doing drag can be a way of making peace with a dark childhood. Drag queen superstar RuPaul Charles is a genuine force of nature, but not easy to pin down gender-wise. You can call RuPaul she or he, it's not important. Ru owns both genders, though in one interview he self-identified as male. With an estimated net worth fortune of 60 million to his name, this successful musician, TV host, entertainer, and activist for LGBTQ rights is a Jack and Jane of all trades. RuPaul's always makes a huge and impressive impact, helped by her skyscraper height of 6 foot 4 inches, rising to 7 feet in his high heels. You can't overlook Ru. be it as the elegantly lanky bowed man in sleek designer suits or as the blonde drag queen with her iconic padded hourglass figure and ferocious temperament. To me, RuPaul perfectly embodies the 21st century Lilith archetype. From early childhood, he lived with strong women, his mother, grandmother, and sisters, while his father was absent. Ru always felt like an alien, which befits the Sun in Scorpio, square Uranus, and was always being picked on by his peers, feeling left out and rejected. At the same time, he longed to perform, show off, and entertain people. His packed fifth house, with a powerful trio of Moon, Mercury, and Neptune in Scorpio, longs to play around, become different characters, and seek confrontation. Lilith in the second house forms a supportive trine, as if she wants to give her blessing. During his Saturn return, RuPaul decided to pull himself together and overcome what he calls his inner saboteur. Saturn in Capricorn in the seventh house of partners in public forms an opposition to Mars Lilith in Cancer at the end of the first and beginning of the second houses, which is talents and self-esteem. The feeling of rejection was almost insufferable at a time. While he felt rejected by white people because he was black, black people rejected him for being gay, and gay people often looked down on him because he was too effeminate. So, at age 28, Ru decided that he was not going to have it anymore. Another strong woman, Oprah Winfrey, who was Lilith at the MC, saved Ru because he loved watching her shows. What followed was a career in the club scene of New York, doing gigs and hosting radio and TV shows, both in and out of drag. When Ru talks about his TV show Drag Race, the Scorpio side shines through. The challenges are compared with the process of dying and being reborn. He defies the contestants to go beyond their own limited perceptions of themselves. The drive to create a strong female character can be seen as a subconscious desire to protect oneself against a world of discrimination, as in the case of RuPaul and countless other drag queens. Drag queens are super feminine heroines, an exaggerated version of what a woman might be like when she is almighty and placed on a pedestal, almost like a goddess. If we look back on how Lilith in the myth gets humiliated because she wants to lie on top of Adam and not passively stuck under him, we understand it's all about sexual desire and roleplay. Today, however, sexuality isn't necessarily linked with traditional gender roles. Because, as RuPaul so famously says, we're all born naked and the rest is drag. RuPaul's Drag Race was first aired in 2009 as a niche gay format. It took a couple of years to hit the zeitgeist and has become phenomenally popular, even winning an Emmy. Surprisingly, there is no fire at all in this chart except for South Node in Leo. Isn't that odd? After all, the reality competition show is all fireworks and as fierce as a flamethrower. The winner receives a cash prize of $100,000 and all the recognition that comes with the title America's Next Drag Superstar. The queens not only fight for their glamorous moments in the spotlight, they must compete in sawing, singing, dancing, acting, and reading and roasting. Above all, they have to hit the runway, now sissy that walk, in death-defying high heels, stunning drag costumes, and Oscar night makeup. But none of this is enough. Contestants must also use their sharp elbows, long acrylic claws, and acid tongues to impress the judges. Each episode culminates in an outrageous lip-sync for your life showdown in which the two weakest queens mime and strut to a pop diva's hit song in a battle to stay in the show, like a gladiatorial display in the Roman Colosseum. This often ends in tears. The loser is sent home to RuPaul's brutal words, sashay away, while the victor is told, Shantae, you stay. Sometimes the two contestants will have bonded during the preceding stressful weeks, but more often than not, the winner is glad to see the rival go and will say something like, I'll help her packing that stupid, shady hoe. In a personal chart, the absence of fire can indicate a lack of drive and trust in one's mojo. You might also find it in the charts of late bloomers. To compensate for this elemental lack, one has to connect with deep inner passions, water, focus on a concrete goal, earth, and meet career opportunities with curiosity and flexibility, air. It's a baffling paradox that absence of fire can make a person come across as super fiery. Libra rising in the show's chart indicates the importance of fair play and a polished appearance. Beauty is key in RuPaul's Drag Race. Venus is in mysterious and oscillating Pisces in the industrious 6th house. So, in this show, Venus may be invited to a fancy dress ball, but she has to do all the work herself. The queens themselves design and sew together their unique costumes as well as apply their own makeup. It's hard labor, quite like a Dickensian sweatshop. The final drag look may resemble Cruella de Vil, Jane Mansfield or Lady Gaga. Well, frogs indeed turn into princesses, very Cinderella. The ever-present moaning mantra of the contestants is, bitch, the struggle is getting real. Venus finds herself tied up in a square with Lilith and Pluto in Capricorn in the 3rd house. This clearly indicates the battle between more playful, inventive and creative Pisces, facets of femininity, Venus, and a more fiercer, more angry side, which is a force to be reckoned with, Pluto, Lilith. Venus is not alone in the 6th house. There's Uranus also, master of the unexpected. Uranus is also the master of the aliens, the shocking misfits and pink sheep in the chart. Well, the planet of freedom is at the apex of a kite, which takes off from retrograde Saturn in Virgo in the 12th house. This is a very delicate placement, never mind the fact that it is in the place of joy in Hellenistic astrology. Psychologically, it often indicates a fear of being alone, an inability to relax and let go. This is also a powerful motivation for a kite. The show's lesson, overcome the restrictions of Saturn. RuPaul's regular words of encouragement are, good luck and don't fuck it up. And strive for freeing yourself through hard work, 6th house. This is very apt for a show which has won many awards and has not only empowered the LGBTQ movement, but inspired many women to play with different facets of their own femininity. They can be coy, seductive, aggressive, obnoxious, alluring, funny, and yet authentic. The show is not necessarily about making oneself attractive to others, but rather celebrating one's own glamorous self. I myself went to a RuPaul show in Hamburg. I was amazed that the majority of the audience were female. Many female fans admire drag queens' courage and guts. They can identify with their struggles and victories and see that whatever your size, color, age, or background, you can free yourself from restrictive role model requirements, mostly dictated by men. The striking stellium in eccentric Aquarius includes the Sun, conjunct wounded Chiron and oscillating Neptune and ambitious Jupiter. The North Node adds further momentum to the group, which is led by dreamy Neptune in the 5th house of showing off, spreading back to the 4th house of roots and deeper inner identity issues. Sun Chiron can be nailed down to the fact that most of the contestants share a painful history of struggle as outsiders in a homophobic environment, often exasperated by race issues. So, we might summarize a wounded Chiron self, Sun, which tries by acting Neptune to stay optimistic, Jupiter, on the karmic journey, North Node. As RuPaul always points out, you have to show us your charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Some moments in the show are truly heartbreaking. Cameras always at the ready, Drag Race chronicles the exhausting preparation in the workrooms where we witness unbelievable transformation. It's during these sessions that many a queen opens up to the other girls and shares her sad story of neglect, hardship, fear, and humiliation. RuPaul always ends the show with an almost religious mantra. If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? Now, can I get an amen up in here? One of my very favorite drag show contestants was Pearl, aka Matthew James Lent, the runner-up of season 7 in 2015. He looked stunning, both as a man and woman, but that was not the only thing special about Pearl. Observant Scorpio RuPaul remarked that he noticed something beneath the cool and laid-back facade of the young New York club drag queen, which struck him as traumatic. And Ru got it right. During his childhood and youth, sensitive and artistic Matthew liked to draw pictures of rich old ladies with big diamond rings and furs. They inspired his gradual transformation into one single distinctive, well-chiseled character whom he named Pearl. One day he just started to paint Pearl on his face instead of on a piece of paper. The next step was to do drag. Originally, the shy Matthew enjoyed drag only as a hobby, but then started to perform in New York. He describes Pearl as a Stepford wife robot bitch. After he nearly won season 7, his career kicked off and Pearl became a household name for immaculate makeup illusion and an avant-garde fashion style. Then, in late 2018, he surprised his fans by confessing on YouTube about his past as an escort and drug user. He had been approached by his former lover who sought forgiveness from Matthew. He had had a toxic relationship with this older, rich man, a relationship which started when he was underage. This public confession was painful to watch, but one could also feel that an enormously heavy burden was lifted from his shoulders. Aptly enough, Jupiter was activating his Lilith by conjunction around that time. Let's have a look at Pearl's birth chart. The time is unknown, so I used noon and no houses. That being said, during an Instagram question and answer session, he said that he had Gemini rising. His chart reveals the twisted dynamics of the ever-viral Lilith issues of shame and acting out. The significant yacht figure immediately jumps out with freedom-loving Uranus at the apex and two quincunxes to routine-hating Mars in Gemini and glamour-seeking Jupiter in Leo. This electric circuit describes much inner restlessness and ambivalence. The chart owner is driven in contradictory directions. Because the yacht can often indicate nervous tendencies, balance has to be found. Mars is challenged by opposition to Lilith in Sagittarius, which in turn is entangled in a T-square with Venus in Virgo as apex, closing the figure with a square to Mars. So, Venus, Mars and Lilith are challenged and must fight out their individual need to shine and get the upper hand. It might be that in Matthew's younger years, Uranus, which seeks distance, was the one in the driving seat. This might have led him to cut himself off from his emotions in order not to feel the pain of shame and self-destruction. Promiscuous people often feel completely cut off from their innermost needs and compensate via sex and drugs. It took Matthew many years and the overwhelming experience of being so highly in demand as Pearl to come into contact with his buried shame. And what about his ex-lover who wanted forgiveness for his sexual abuse? Well, Pearl's Lilith gave him the middle finger. There would be no forgiving and forgetting. Lilith's message was, what you did was wrong. If you want to dig deeper into the fascinating world of Lilith, go to my website and download my 3-hour webinar series. In this series, I explore femininity and female roles. I shed light on the problems which men have with their suppressed femininity, and I elaborate on gender stereotypes. I illustrate Lilith issues by using biographical stories of many, many interesting people. Pete Burns, Mata Hari, Barbara Streisand, Amy Winehouse, Dorian Electra, Dame Edna, Queen Elizabeth I, the Cowlitz twins, and many, 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 many more. Also, please like my video and subscribe to my channel.